All right, today we're jumping into a really powerful and, let's be honest, pretty unsettling diagnosis of Philippine politics. The basic idea isn't just that the system is broken, it's that it might actually be built to push the worst people right to the very top.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The worst rise to the top. That is the core argument we're looking at today. It's this bold claim that what's happening isn't really a democracy, it's something else entirely.
And believe it or not, there's a word for this: kakistocracy. A government run by the worst, the least qualified, the most unscrupulous people you can find. The author of our source material says this is the most honest way to describe the system. So, the big question is, how did things get to this point?
Okay, so rule by the worst. First things first, let's look at the evidence. The thing is, this isn't some new hot take. It's a pattern that scholars have been tracking for decades.
You can trace the breadcrumbs all the way back. You've got Werfel writing about post-colonial elites, Belinda Aquino breaking down the plunder during the Marcos years. You've even got Onofre Corpus pointing out endemic corruption way back in 1959. So the research is there. The pattern is, well, pretty undeniable. So what's the root cause of all this? Well, the source we're looking at points to this fundamental clash. You've got a feudal society that's trying to run on the software of a liberal constitution. And that quote just nails the central conflict, doesn't it? The country has this amazing legal framework for a modern democracy, but the argument here is that it's all running on these deeply ingrained feudal social rules. And that creates these massive distortions in who actually gets to hold power. And just look at the scale of this problem. 4/5, that is 80% of Congress in the hands of political families. This isn't democracy, it's an oligarchy. Power is basically passed down like a family heirloom, and that just concentrates wealth and influence in the hands of a few. So you might be wondering, how do they get around the rules? Well, here's the playbook. Term limits were supposed to fix this, but they've just created this massive loophole. When a politician's term is up, what happens? Their spouse, their child, their cousin just steps in to take their place. The name on the ballot might change, but the family's grip on power, that doesn't budge. It's a revolving door that basically makes a mockery of the whole system. And this leads to a really direct and frankly uncomfortable question. When your last name becomes the main qualification for getting into office, what happens to actual competence, to integrity, to knowing how to do the job? But here's the kicker. It's not just about the leaders. It's also about us, the voters. The next part of this diagnosis is all about how we, ourselves, reinforce this whole system by voting with our tribe. Wow, that is a pretty brutal take, right? The argument is that the whole idea of a single, unified Filipino identity is a lot weaker than we'd like to admit. Instead, our real loyalties often lie with our region, our language, our clan. Think about it like this. When it comes to how we vote, our regional and language ties often take up the most space in our heads. They can completely dwarf these bigger ideas of civic duty or national identity. And what does that mean? It means we tend to vote for one of us, a candidate from our hometown who speaks our dialect, instead of maybe the best person for the whole country. So here's a question to ask yourself, and be honest. When was the last time you crossed those lines in the voting booth? The argument here is that this kind of tribal voting is an incredibly powerful force, and it's something the kakistocrats have gotten really, really good at exploiting. And all of this is held together by what the author calls the patronage death grip. These are the unwritten cultural rules that lock the whole system in place, and they've been totally weaponized for political gain. It's like there are two completely different sets of rules playing out at the same time. On one hand, you have the official civic values a republic needs, things like rule of law and public accountability. But in the real world, it's often the feudal values that win. Utang na loob, that powerful debt of gratitude, can keep people silent. Hiya, or shame, can be twisted to punish whistleblowers instead of the actual corrupt officials. And personal loyalty to your patron, that almost always beats out any kind of duty to the public. And this is where it gets really personal. This question cuts right to the heart of the double standard that this whole system creates. Let's talk about something called moral tribalism. And this is it, right here. It's the idea that the rules of right and wrong completely change depending on whether it's our guy or their guy. When a politician from our tribe gets caught, it's explained away as practical, just taking care of his people. But when a rival does the exact same thing, it's a criminal outrage. This kind of logic is exactly how the worst people can thrive, because they're protected by the blind loyalty of their supporters.
Okay, so that was a pretty bleak diagnosis. But it's not all doom and gloom. The source doesn't just leave us there. It pivots to a prescription, laying out what we, the citizens, must do to find a way forward. The first steps are all about clarity and making a choice. First, you've got to call the problem what it is. Don't sugarcoat it. Call it kakistocracy. Second, we have to actively dismantle the dynasty system. That means supporting real anti-dynasty laws and just refusing to vote for the family placeholders. And third, we have to make a conscious effort to vote like a citizen of a nation, not just a member of a tribe. And the plan continues with some even deeper, more challenging work. It calls for us to flip our cultural norms upside down, to start using shame, or Hiya, against the corrupt. And here's the hardest part of all, demanding accountability from our own side, maybe even more fiercely than we do from our rivals. Ultimately, it's about rebuilding a shared civic identity and demanding that the rule of law applies to everyone, no exceptions. In the end, it all boils down to this one massive question. This is the choice that, as the author puts it, should keep us all awake at night. Are we citizens who demand accountability, or are we subjects who just accept whatever our patrons give us? And we'll end on this final thought, which is really a direct challenge. See, the people benefiting from this system, they're banking on us choosing comfort over the hard work of change. They are counting on us doing nothing. The only way out is if we decide to prove them wrong.